Right now, here in San Francisco, somebody is about to make one of the biggest financial mistakes of their lives when it comes to a housing decision because of some silly thing they read on Facebook regarding foreclosures. As the #1 mortgage expert here in the Bay Area answering your burning questions about this market, I can tell you from experience, there are a lot of people who miss out on their homes because they get hung up on data or news that isn't even true. And they're also waiting for a crash that honestly is just not coming. Now, most people think that a neighbor or someone on your street's distressed sale is a signal or a sign that the market's about to invert or crash. But professional appraisers completely ignore these sales for a shocking reason. Now, the media won't tell you this, and your realtor may not even know it, but the next 10 minutes are going to save you potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. My name is Arjun Dhingra. I'm a 24-year vet of the mortgage industry, and I live right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I work in downtown San Francisco and have assisted thousands of families and individuals acquiring real estate and making smarter moves when it comes to taking out mortgage debt. So if our team can be of any help to you, please reach out to me on Instagram at Arjun Mortgage, and I will personally answer any questions that you might have about the market or help you put together a plan so that you can own a piece of it at some point in the future. I look forward to that opportunity to helping you in any way I can, and let's get into today's topic. So guys, here is what market value really means, because it's not at all what people think. And before we dive into why that foreclosure that may be happening on your street is not going to be the result of the market tanking, it's important that we understand what this topic actually is and how it's defined. Market value is defined as the most probable price that a property will sell for as of a particular date, assuming that the sale is consummated between a willing buyer and a willing seller, neither of whom is under any pressure whatsoever to complete the transaction. Now, the key phrase is here, guys, neither is under any kind of pressure, which automatically excludes any distressed sales from setting market value. This is why they get ignored. This means that there's going to be some numbers that are a little bit off, or an absence or even complete omission of certain sales in the immediate vicinity of a subject property, especially in unique San Francisco neighborhoods. Now, professional appraisers, and everyone who's out here doing appraisals these days is a consummate professional. They are specifically trained and know how to adjust the valuations of the properties that they're inspecting for these reasons. Now, I mentioned willing buyer and willing seller, but let me quickly define those for you. A willing buyer means someone who's making a rational decision based on market conditions, not someone who's being forced to buy immediately due to circumstances. Now, a willing seller means someone who's selling because they want to, not because they have to due to financial distress, job loss, or foreclosure. So now that you understand true market value, let's look at why all these scary social media posts and misleading news headlines are absolutely bullshit. So there have been a lot of articles and data that's come out over the last few years to try and scare people and getting them to think that the market's about to invert. I remember last year reading an article that foreclosures were up over 100% in a certain part of the country. And when you read that kind of a headline, you get scared, particularly if you're a buyer who's on the fence and you're unsure of this, or you know that your parents lost their homes during the foreclosure crisis and you're still PTSD'd from that. So I totally get it, but let's take a step back and do the math. If you are going from a place of 0 foreclosures and then all of a sudden there's 1 in your neighborhood, what percentage increase is that? That's right, it's 100%. And the reality is, guys, in a normal functioning market, 1 in every 1,400 sales will be that related to a foreclosure. So it's just not that many. And this is not 2008. And that is because foreclosures and short sales usually do not meet the conditions outlined in the definition of market value because they involve sellers under pressure. They have to put their home on the market and get out because they can no longer afford it or they're about to lose it to the bank. A short sale or a sale of property that occurred before foreclosure might have involved a typical seller motivation, like a highly motivated seller who needs to move immediately. There's also individual distress sales, which are exceptions. They're not the rule, and they shouldn't be used to gauge overall market health. Now, during the foreclosure crisis, just as a reference point, there were many homeowners that were literally losing everything, and so they were scrapping all of the appliances and things within the house that should normally be accompanying it in the event of a sale and selling these things to try and make some kind of money. Now, this dramatically affected the sales price, but had nothing to do or speak to market conditions. And that's still the case with any foreclosure that might be happening in today's market. Now, on social media, it just simply amplifies all of these outliers. And although some misleading social media posts tie local real estate listings to federal layoffs, there's just no evidence to support that connection. One distressed sale in Pacific Heights does not mean that all of Pacific Heights is crashing, or the same thing in Marin County or Bernal Heights. And it's just simply the viral nature of of news and social media. The one bit of information about a foreclosure will gain all of the attention and ignore the 99 normal transactions or sales going on in that same area. So just remember, guys, bad news sells, and foreclosure is still a stinging and damning word because it's not that far removed from the 2008 financial crisis. And a lot of people that are buyers in today's market actually grew up during that time period and watched their parents experience all the hardship and ruin in some cases that came by way of the foreclosure crisis. Okay, so we're talking about how these sales don't actually matter. And if individual sales are not actually impacting market value, then how do professionals like us actually help determine that value? So let me show you. Here's what happens when a professional appraiser evaluates your home and why they ignore those panic-inducing foreclosure sales. First off, it's acceptable to use foreclosures and short sales as comparables if the market data indicates they are the best and most appropriate sales available, but they require significant adjustments. So the appraiser must address in the appraisal report the prevalence of such sales in the subject neighborhood and the impact on its value. Of course, the physical condition and conditions of sale are two distinctly different factors that must be considered separately by appraisers. And when appraisers choose comparable sales, they examine the market area of that subject property, assess its characteristics, and identify similar comparable sales that meet the market value definition. In San Francisco's extremely diverse neighborhoods, appraisers look at micro markets, not the entire market as a whole, comparing Noe Valley, for example, to Noe Valley, not looking at distressed sales across the city. Professional appraisers have years of experience and are able to differentiate between these type of one-off transactions and what's actually going on in the way of a trend. So let's look at the reality. Let's look at what is actually happening in the trends of what's going on in the marketplace and not what's happening on Instagram and Facebook. While social media is screaming crash, here's what's actually happening in the marketplace, and it might surprise you. June 2025 brought 3.93 million in sales nationally, with a median sales price of $435,300 and just under 5 months worth of inventory. Multiple years of undersupply are driving record high home prices, not speculation or bubble. Nationwide, for sale inventory is up nearly 16% from a year ago. But context matters because we're coming from historically low inventory levels. The 2025 sales projection shows national sales trending up just over 2%, which is modest, but it'll reach over 4 million home sales for the year, which is indicating growth, but a little bit of a subdued market. Guys, the other reality is that the wealth effect is absolutely real. A typical homeowner nationally has experienced just under $150,000 in equity expansion or wealth that's been created through owning real estate over the last 5 years. San Francisco specifically continues to see strong demand due to the tech sector stability and very, very limited housing supply. Home construction continues to lag population growth. In the United States, 1.6 million new homes are needed to be built and brought forth to market in order to keep up with demand, but only about 1.1 million actually make it. So we run at about a 500,000 home deficit year after year. This continues to add up, and it's exactly why there's this huge disproportionate imbalance of buyers to available homes in the marketplace. And that's why a housing crash just can't mathematically occur. Until that actually flips, you're not going to see prices invert. Yes, there'll be the one-off sale here and there, which is why we're talking about it here in this video. But to look at a foreclosure or any distressed sale that's going on in any neighborhood in San Francisco or the surrounding Bay Area and to think it's suddenly a trend is a little bit foolish. So make sure you tune out social media when it comes to these topics. Okay, so what does this all mean for you as a buyer or a homeowner? First, let's start with the takeaways for a buyer. And this is your action plan to be able to navigate this market with tactics and action instead of fear and confusion. As real estate professionals, we are often surrounded or confronted by all kinds of misleading data sources. So it's important that you work with and are getting information from people that actually have a pulse on what's happening in the marketplace. They have years of experience and have been through some various market cycles to know and interpret just what the hell is going on. Logic dictates that market effects actually take time. And as one expert has famously noted, you'll get notice that you're fired on Friday and then you're listing your home for sale on Monday. No, that's not the case. So I think just from an individual decision-making standpoint, logic would lead you to believe that it's way too early to see that any of these types of distressed sales are leading to a trend or that the market is actually going to be affected by it. Please remember this, right? Do not take and use social media posts as a way of gauging your time to enter or exit the market. Focus on your own personal financial readiness and not what's going on with online chatter. I say all the time that real estate is a personal decision, which means it operates on your clock, not market forces or what's happening with interest rates or what Chairman Powell is going to do or not going to do. Your life is in your hands and those are your decisions and you make your moves when you feel it's appropriate. So focus on your own personal financial readiness. Make sure that you're working with an actual mortgage advisor that's going to give you a detailed strategy for how to tackle this market, and you know exactly what your purchasing range is and how to flex it either up or down. This means do not seek approvals online or quotes. They can be very misleading, are designed to entice you to go out and shop with more of an appetite than you might need to, and in many cases aren't actually being thorough in approving you or telling you what's realistic. We see countless clients that come to us after being misled by an online lender and even sometimes entering into escrow only to find out that the financing they thought they were approved for was complete bullshit. So amateur hour is over, guys. Make sure you're working with pros that understand this market. Remember, there isn't one national market. There are 630 micro markets. So the real estate professional or real estate advisor that you work with, make sure you ask them for specific data about the area that you're seeking a home in, not accepting just national data, headlines, or facts, because they don't actually apply to you. What's going on in the Omaha, Nebraska market is going to be very different than what's happening in Oakland or right here in San Francisco. Specifically in San Francisco, what's going on downtown is different from what's going on in Pacific Heights. So be specific, because it's too big of a decision to just hang on national headlines. Look at days on market, inventory levels, and sale to list price ratios in your target neighborhood. And remember the point I made earlier, guys, real estate is hyper-local. What's happening in one neighborhood does not apply to others. So in conclusion, guys, remember that the housing market is not determined by that one-off random foreclosure or distressed sale in your neighborhood, or the viral post about price drops. Inventory remains well below balance levels. New home construction cannot keep up with demand, and appraisers, professional appraisers, know how to evaluate homes and markets. So please do not let social media fear-mongering drive any sort of decisions. Make sure you're talking to professionals and people that have a pulse on this marketplace like me. And here's what you can do every time you do read one of these headlines, because I know they can be triggering, especially if you're a really active buyer and you want to get a piece of this market, but you're easily scared off by some of those doom and gloom stories. Ask yourself this: when you see a headline about a home selling below asking, ask, was it a normal sale between willing parties? Was the home properly maintained? Was it on the market for a reasonable time? These questions matter a heck of a lot more than any sort of clickbait headline. I hope you guys found this video useful. Make sure to block out all that noise, talk to real pros, and I'll see you guys on the next video.